task of theology is a complex one. And remember, if it's really a work of faith, when you're doing theology, bring the inspiration, the enthusiasm, the wonder that you've had as you reflect on revelation and the nature of faith itself. But what we've seen about revelation and faith shows us that the task of theology is complex. In fact, we can describe the work of theology as going through three phases. First of all, there's positive theology. Theology that determines the data that a theologian has to work with. It has to interpret the scriptures, that complex literature we've spoken of. We'll come back to that. Then it has also to interpret the living faith of the church down through the ages. The Saviour said, "I'll be with you always, even to the end of time. My words will not pass away." The faith given to the church will always be there. And therefore, the living faith of the church is a witness. It's an index theologians use to understand the continuity and unity of our Christian faith. So that study of Christian thought down through the ages concerns faith at the level of popular life, the grassroots level of the faith, very important. The faith lives in the church. And then there's the interpretations made by theologians in different ages. So that must be studied. And then there is the authoritative guidance of the church's authority. The church has an authority that safeguards this living faith and gives guidance to people in times of uncertainty or doubt about the faith. So these teachings of the church also are very important for the theologian. So that's the work of positive theology, the first phase, getting the data together. Then what we call systematic theology. All that we've learned about the living faith of the church then is systematized by thinkers. They recognize the advances that have been made, the achievements that have been made. They reflect on how this can be put together. They formulate an inspiring vision for the church of their time and speak to the church of their time. That's systematic theology. It's an enormous task, and you can imagine how rich it is. People in different cultures, different backgrounds, making their interpretation, helping their own age and people to understand the faith. And then the final phase of theology is pastoral theology. How do we hand on the faith? We've seen that faith brings with it a responsibility to share in God's own ongoing message to his people, an encouragement for his people. So how do we hand that on? Pastoral theology reflects on the ways in which the faith can be communicated to young and to old, how the faith can be taken to cultures and peoples who have not heard the Christian message or haven't heard it in its fullness, how the faith can be brought to people of our own age who are uncertain and threatened by the fashions of the time. All this is pastoral theology that discusses the ways in which the mission of the church can be carried forward. Now those three phases, you'll notice, have different methodologies. Positive theology uses all the skills that have been developed in interpreting literary traditions. To understand the Bible, it's a literature, as we said. We've got to interpret how that literature was formed. So that's critical awareness. Great skills have been developed by scholars in modern times of making this interpretation, and that's brought to the work of interpreting the biblical material, then interpreting the thought of the church down through the ages. Then systematic theology. Its primary instrument has been the resource of philosophy, clarified thought, disciplined thought. How do we understand the great truths of faith in a way that is disciplined responsible, balanced, and meaningful for people. That's the work of systematic theologians, and they use the richness of human thought in all its forms, particularly philosophy, and the history of ideas, the way in which thought does progress down through the ages. Then in pastoral theology, in modern times, the advances in psychology, understanding how people develop, how their thought develops, how they mature, the understanding of social patterns, the handing on of ideas in society, and social thought, cultural differences. All of these things we have a far more informed understanding of today, and they must be brought to the work of theology as it reflects on how the faith can be interpreted, how it can be handed on.